What's up? Welcome to another craft show live stream, but it's also going to be recorded, so I'll post it later because sometimes it's hard to find the live stream stuff. The world famous Dr. Beard Fosse, not a real doctor, will join me very soon, hopefully. He's got, oh, there he is. Look at that. Look at that. Right when I started, he decided to join the call. He
Hello.
didn't want to wait. Hi. So we're live. I went ahead and
Oh,
kicked it
sweet.
off. I just figured you'd just come in hot.
That's fine. I'm hot.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
I've got something here that I'm probably going to go back to an old tradition for this live
You have the
show.
no button?
No, different tradition.
Cracking a beer? I guess it is technically where you are lunchtime, though. For our friends, that it's currently lunchtime in that central time zone. Thank you for sharing your lunch with us. For our friends where it may be past lunchtime, cracking a beer sounds like a delightful idea. And for those of you that may have just woken up for breakfast in the California world,
Yep.
welcome to the
It's a
live
strong
stream.
day.
It's a strong day. Sounds like it. Things must be going swimmingly, good sir.
They're going good.
Okay, well, that's a positive. I
Yeah,
have to
they
make sure
actually
my
are going
audio
good.
is turned off. There we go. Well, good.
I even got a ticket offer for Wake Forest football games for $5.
Oh, a $5 football ticket.
Yeah, with actually
Maybe.
good seats.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I might have to do it. That's a whole different thing now. That
That
just
sounds
sounds.
delightful.
Yeah.
Jeff Fagan is in here with us from Reach Films. There's Robin hanging out too.
Nice.
If you or Geoff, as we say in this channel, Mr. Reach Films, if you want to jump in on this conversation,
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
love to have you jump in and chat. The primary goal of this talk, what I was going to actually talk about today with Jeff, potentially in the pipeline. One of the things we've started utilizing, because I know it's like a buzzword now, and I get it, but is this idea of let me get off that. Is this idea of using AI? Like everything's like AI this, AI that. Half of it is not really AI. It's just programming. Some of it's actual
Yeah.
AI. I mean, it's all programming, but I mean, like some of it is. I think it's just become a buzzword that people are taking advantage of. I feel like my microphone could be adjusted. Let's just make a little tweak. There we go.
You know what could help your microphone? AI.
Yeah, apparently. I will say in DaVinci 18.5, there is a new feature that is a quote AI. I don't think it's really AI, but I shot something recently that had a very noisy, I can't say where it was because some of those people watch us and I don't want to say that. So I shot something recently and it was very noisy and it was very hot. So we had to run an air conditioner. And because of that, it was like a portable one. Because of that, if we turned it off, like the talent just sweated, like they melted. And so we left it on, and the voice or whatever it is, clean audio, voice only inside of DaVinci,
Yes.
click of a button automatically did it. It's one of those chances where, in that case, quote AI. I'm air quoting. If anybody listens to this as a podcast, I'm air quoting right now. The air quote AI did a fantastic job. On most of it. They had one where my oldest daughter, Miss Chum, she was in it, and she doesn't speak. She kind of trails off.
Yes, she does.
Yeah, so she kind of trailed off, and we didn't get that bit. But that all being said, it worked really well to get stuff set up, and especially because I was using a good microphone to kind of get things going anyway. So what I'd like to do is, and I'm not monitoring the chat, so if something pops up, we
I
need to
am
talk
now.
about it, whatever. Okay, great. So Fagan, I'll let you loop into this conversation here
Yeah,
shortly.
send him a link, he said.
Send him a link. All right.
Yep.
Well, can you just forward him the link you have, Worley? Because that same link
Yes,
works for him.
I can.
It's actually it should work for him. Anyway, so while Jeff, Dr. Beard Fosse, not a real doctor, is doing that part, I will do.
I just play one on TV.
That's right. I'll go over what I was going to talk about. So I'm going to do a little screen share. I think this will be okay live. I don't know, but in post, it actually turns out really well. By the way, we switched streaming software to something called Riverside, if you've never seen it. Riverside's fascinating because it actually records very high quality, but it also records on client side. So it is recording a version of Jeff. It uploads it, It's recording a version of me, uploads it to the cloud. You can use their AI software to not only edit the video for you, but it'll also generate clips for you for like social media. And you could do them in a stack. So if you want to put them on like the TikToks or the vertical stack, it does that. And let's face it, by the way, separate conversation. One episode is going to be about why vertical video is actually really important now. Despite us hating it, doesn't matter. So I'm going to start out with this deck, and I want to talk through this deck because I think it sets up everything. It looks like it's starting to share. Are you seeing the deck there, Jeff?
I am not seeing it on YouTube.
Maybe
No, I am.
delayed.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
delayed.
okay.
Delayed. That's all it was.
So this deck is actually from a project we pitched. It was a short film. This was for a client called Women's Resource Center. It's basically it's like a pregnancy resource center. So in this instance, we pitched something that was more of a short film. It was a campaign to generate. It was to generate awareness, but it was also to work in favor of helping them raise more funds. And so, what's not totally here? This isn't the full script. This is what we gave to them, but this is not the full script. We presented that separately. The full script actually has interviews that cut into it, so that you had both this narrative angle and then you had a very awesome documentary style. I'm not going to talk about how this went right now. We'll talk about that after I get done with this part. But one of the things we did is that I needed to generate certain images. And if you guys have been around the channel long enough or you've been around, you know that in many cases, what we like to do is go to Shot Deck or some of these other solutions. But sometimes they don't. It's sometimes difficult to get sensitive material in Shot Deck. Sometimes the angle or the shot I'm looking for goes the wrong way, meaning it may have content that's not appropriate for all clients, right? It's great on the film side of things, but maybe not appropriate for certain clients. So in this case, what we did is we generated them. So I'm going to talk through it. So we have this girl sits in her bed staring at the screen of her laptop, something resembling hope set far back in her eyes. So very moody opening, broody. And you can see the girl has like a light. She's underlit. The room is very dark. There's just that little lamp in the background. We even were able to key in some lighting in this to really get these shots. We wanted our client in this case to really understand what the vibe was we were going for. I'm gonna jump back up to the beginning here. So then same thing in the bathroom. I wanted this like mirror thing because we were talking about duality, and it was very important to us to have this concept of duality because in this case, the young lady was in high school and she gets pregnant. And so now she has this dual role. She's a student and she's a mom or going to be a mom at the same time. And she's conflicted. So there's two sides of her story. She's challenged with it. So we wanted to make sure we included this duality. So the mirror was important in showing some level of reflection. We wanted it to feel moody and not dark in a way that was that brought you down, but dark in a way that it just felt a little bit heavy. We just wanted a little bit of heaviness. And we wanted to play with shadow and light, certainly because you'll understand the reveal as we go through it. So she's on her way to a parking lot. We were going to set it at night, like maybe early morning, but we just wanted them to understand the vibe of what we were after. Now she's sitting down with her parents. You can see in the background, there's like some Christmas lights. That was just, I'll explain that in a second, where it came from. But we wanted to start playing with and introducing the idea of bokeh in the background. We wanted them to understand the idea of deep focus. You can see, again, there's that duality of light on her. Half of her face is lit, left side lit, right side dark. Her parents are silhouetted. She looks worried. She looks kind of strung out, stressed out, whatever it may be, because that's where she's at. She's talking to her parents, and her parents aren't being mean, but her parents are being parents, and it's not that the girl necessarily made a mistake in a mistake sense, but probably not the best, wisest choice in her circumstances. Everybody's different, but in her circumstances. So she's sitting in there. And then we wanted to be able to tie in, all right, now that same girl is talking to her parents. They went from dinner, now they're at parents. And again, we didn't need to specify the dinner table. I just wanted them to get the vibe. We're trying to get the client on the vibe. If you notice, there's always like a little source in the background. And if you look at the lighting, it's always got this this darkness, this halo, this vibe to it. And there's a reason for that I'll talk about in the next portion of this. There's the laptop shot that we talked about. I was on that earlier. So as the girl goes through, she's gotten this laptop, and she ultimately makes a decision to go visit this women's resource center, which is not a political statement of pro-life or pro-choice. They actually have lots of different options across the top in their world, so they aren't specific to one thing or another, and certainly we aren't either in this case. We're just using this as a reference point. But what gets interesting in this time is now she goes, and of course we've brought in a little bit hope, so we've warmed it up a little bit more. We've brought in more light. There's more radiant light coming through. She's cleaned up. She doesn't look as stressed out. She doesn't look as strung out. She looks more like, like there's an opportunity for her one way or the other. And the interesting side of this is we don't say what the answer is. There's no definitive to say, oh, here it is. The answer is X or Y or insert political firestorm. It's none of those things. We just leave it and let it be, because it's an individual choice in the sense of what you choose to do. And so that's where we land. And then at the end, we just remind them of kind of the imagery so that they kind of feel the vibe. Entire script to follow. So that's the setup. I'm going to go and stop that. There's Jeff. I'll bring you in here in just a second, Jeff. Here's Mr. Fagan.
Oh, hey,
there
guys.
he is. Hi,
Oh, hey,
buddy.
just slid right in just in time. What's going on?
That's like sliding into somebody's DMs.
I know, right? All right, let me readjust. I don't know if this is how it looks on the stream.
YouTube, you look fine.
All right, cool.
I think it's a 3-stack. In Riverside, it's like singles, and then you can change it. There's some view button somewhere. I don't remember exactly where it is, but you can.
Gotcha.
I can make it all about Jeff Fagan.
Yeah, as long as I didn't want it to look like I'm like all the way to the left side of the screen. But how you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I'm doing good. I was like, oh, dang, they went live. I'm going to join Jeff on the little drink wagon. You know what I'm saying?
East Coast people.
Yeah, East Coast. So cheers.
Yeah, well, I'll cheers you with a LaCrux.
Oh, I'll take it. I love that stuff. Good. I'm actually just packing to go on a little trip this weekend. Taking a very complicated, I'm overcomplicating a family cam. And I'm bringing my FX30 with my Sigma 50 to 100, an anamorphic front filter, and then an Atomos recorder so I could test the RAW and that camera. So like complete overkill, but it's like when can I test this stuff out? I haven't used it on any kind of shoot. So when you bring it out for fun, that's when you can kind of mess around.
No, we do it all the time. So I want to jump back into more of that conversation, but have you at all messed with any sort of AI specifically using Midjourney? Okay.
When I haven't used Midjourney, but I'll tell you what I have used, and I've used a lot of AI. I've used it as far as ChatGPT. I've used it to help form the basis of scripts, but not write scripts. I've used so there's this plugin for Premiere that's AI based, and it's called Autopod, and I use it for my multicam podcasts. So I'll have either a 2-cam, 3-cam, or 3-cam with like a virtual cam like we have here in Riverside that shows the three of us, and I'll use Autopod to literally do the camera cutting for me based on the audio. So I use AI there, and I use that on every podcast we do. I let it do the cutting, and then I just do like my physical cuts to the actual edit myself to remove parts and do some fancy editing and whatnot. And then the last thing I use AI, I don't know if you guys have heard of Opus Clip.
I do not know
but
that.
They're a service that you can put either a YouTube video or you can upload your video to them, and they'll give you vertical video content based off of your content with the text and everything. Kind of like I was doing at Cardone with like all like the text that pop up like underneath you with like certain words that are emphasized in different colors and all that stuff. Yeah. They'll do it for you. It's not free, but it's like, it was like $180 for a year, and you get like 50 hours of processing. So if you put in an hour video, it takes an hour of processing out of your credits, but works really well for like podcasts, any kind of like review video that's longer than 8 minutes. It's cheaper than hiring a person, unfortunately, to do that. And it's sometimes a lot better quality. So I've been using that quite a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting that automated editing. We toyed with it on a couple docu pieces. And I have I can't wait to have him on. I wish he could have been part of this conversation. We have a buddy, Jeff and I, Worley and I have a buddy that works for Universal. And so prior to the strike, their biggest concern was, of course, AI and what was going to happen. And he paints a different picture than anyone else I've heard. And some of that's inside baseball. Like this guy's, his role is to investigate new technology. So like he's the one that really shattered my opinion of virtual production because he showed me
Yeah, me too.
the reality of virtual production. Me and Worley were there for that. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
So long story short, his fear about AI, or the studio fear of AI, is that it's going to be content that, you know, you type in what you want and it creates it. And that's what they're literally scared of. That's what they're worried about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my thing is, I still struggle with the idea of I don't think it's going to, I don't care how good it gets. I just don't believe it can get all the way there. So I still think there's an analog element to the creative side. But if we can automate workflows, my God, man, now we're talking. Same with podcasts like this.
100%. That's where I see using it. Really just automating workflows, making, if I could pop out a podcast that used to take me, like hours of my day to do, if I could pop that podcast after it's edited in like an hour, I mean, holy smokes. I mean, I'd be doing more podcasts, quite frankly, and doing a lot more content.
That's why we went back live, is because frankly, I started experimenting. I started working with a TikToker, and we produce content for him. And so when we started doing stuff, I was like, hey man, let's just do a podcast. We started testing Riverside, and Riverside started basically generating the podcast for me. All I have to do is tag the front and the back and I'm done. Okay, well that's stupid. That just saved me.
Yeah.
I can tag 5 episodes in 30 minutes, right? And then just crank everything out. So I'm with you on that. Now, what's interesting to me is where I've really fallen in love with AI is I just went through that deck, and I can't remember if in the lobby you get to see it or not, but I just went through a pitch deck we gave. And the imagery that I used in that pitch deck was completely AI generated. I put a disclaimer at the beginning, because if you're paying really close attention, the characters don't exactly match, but I got the vibe close enough. That's one of the hard parts about AI. You have to preface it right now, right? But what I wanted to show you guys is some tests I did that I think you'll find interesting as camera, as DPs and filmmakers and creatives equal to the idea of what it is. So once it loads up, this is going to load up obviously my mid journey. And I'm going to show you some of my prompts so you get them. You guys play with these if you haven't. And I'm sure there's people in the chat or people watching the show or after the fact. If you have stuff, please feel free to throw it in the comments. Again, I'm going to post this as a separate episode, not just a live stream, so it exists on its own.
Yeah.
Because I think that works better than just waiting on YouTube to do the live. All right, so if you look, I typed my first prompt, and my first prompt is a woman staring into the distance, muted colors, noir, cinematic lighting, in the style of Roger Deakins. Now look at those frames. Like, I think if I click on it, does it blow it up for you guys?
Yeah,
Can
it
you
does.
see that a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy how detailed it is. Now I see why people are worried. I see why people are worried. I mean, look, but at the same time, your argument about workflow could be used for that. It's like, that's not generating necessarily the finished movie, but it is giving you a lot of ideas for lighting. It's telling you kind of how you could frame it, how you could light it, and saving you a lot of work in your workflow.
I got gooses because you're spot on to where I'm going. So I wanted to show, one of the problems I had is I hate the 4:3 style. And so I'm like, hey, why can't I make it 16:9? So I tried the prompt. What I have learned, at least with my version, I was using 5.0 in Midjourney. There's a 5.2 now. But at least in 5.0, you can't re-roll it. You can't just remix it and add the prompt. You actually have to go back from the beginning and add it. It doesn't like, right. Okay. So you can see it just stretching the frame hideously, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Still can't get it right. I'm struggling. Now, I got it right.
There
now,
we go.
The characters have changed, but look at the framing on this and tell me that's a scene from any Deakins movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
all of them are.
Especially that top left one. Yeah, I would almost really believe that was real.
So
I'd be like, that's totally real.
The bottom left for me is fascinating because that looks like a 35 up close, which it's not going to know that. And I'll show an experiment I tried with that. It doesn't know that Deakins likes a 32 mil, like for close, like, but look at it and then look at the bokeh in the background. I mean, look at the detail of the shot. If we were trying to find something to sell an idea to help shape us, yes, you could go through Shot Deck, which is fantastic. I pay for a subscription, but I'm kind of leaning towards dropping Shot Deck, especially as I started figuring some things out. So as we go through, we see this basic prompt, we set the framing. Obviously, when it re-rolled, there's similar characteristics to the first ones, but in reality, they changed them. So now I tried it again. and I started playing with the bokeh. So I attempted to re-roll in this. So a woman staring to the distance, muted color, cinematic lighting in the style of Roger Deakins, anamorphic camera, oval bokeh. And if you watch, if you look at the edges of the frame, you'll start to see the circular pattern of creating. Now, it's not going to perfectly replicate the bokeh the way we know it's supposed to look, but you can start to get the vibe. It does look nice, doesn't it?
It does.
So my point is to keep showing the advancements. So I keep re-rolling and I try different things, and you can see the shifts are occurring as we go through, and I'm continuously experimenting with how we can change it. So now, if you look at
do
this,
you think it's learning?
100%.
Yeah,
but it's also
definitely is.
it's also adapting. This right here is not Deakins. That doesn't look like Deakins to me.
That's Spielberg,
That's Steven Spielberg.
and it does give a different vibe.
And here's what's weird to me. If we go back and compare and this may be me reading into it too much. So the thing I've always noted about Spielberg is Spielberg loves to do shots where it's somebody looking. And he likes to show you more of their face looking through the frame. So look here, Spielbergian. We're looking through the frame, right? Deakins, we're not necessarily looking through the frame.
No.
You don't see the
Yeah.
full wraparound of their face, right? I don't think that's a coincidence. I just don't.
I don't either.
So,
But
so
you didn't change that though, right? You didn't change
Yeah, that
it
was
to say do
Spielberg.
Spielberg.
He
Oh, you
changed
told
the
him to do
prompt.
Spielberg.
Yeah.
this is
Okay,
a
okay.
Spielberg prompt. Yeah.
Okay, cool. No, that's crazy then. Okay. That's cool.
So then you get into Kaminsky, and look how moody it suddenly gets, right?
Yep.
And because Kaminsky, and it's pulling the body of work from Kaminsky, and he's done enough Spielberg movies that if you notice, they're not hard profile like Deakins were.
Yeah.
They're a little more spun around forward, and we're seeing a little more of this three-quarter front type vibe, right? You can see it even more so here. Look at the softness on the top left there, how it wraps around. So again, if you're trying to show these images and use this stuff to create something, I think it's fascinating to be able to generate it. I played with Kaminsky for a while because he's one of my favorite DPs, so we worked on him a little bit.
Nice.
As you can tell. Yeah, he's my jam.
Yeah, yeah. But it looks
Now-
fantastic.
So this next one's fascinating because Wes Anderson nor would Roger Deakins ever shoot on anamorphic, right? Wes Anderson is a very awesome prompt inside of Midjourney. Like I could roll up anything we want. In fact, I'll show you way on back. If I go way back to just me experimenting with stuff or other projects, there is a Wes Anderson roll. Let's see if I can find it. There's me as a Pixar character.
Is that Breaking Bad, Drew?
Yeah. Look at this. So this is my team with the prompt in the style of Wes Anderson drawn.
Okay.
It feels like it. It's got the vibe.
Yeah.
Nobody on my team wears a yellow beret. I mean, Morgan might. I doubt it. She's not that kind of person. My point is like, so it knows that certain filmmakers and certain artists have style, so it's pulling style points
Yeah.
in order to help craft this image. There's one down here that Jeff will pay attention to and really be fascinated. So again, because I said Wes Anderson, if you look at this one, if you look at their hairstyles, they've all changed. Each one of these characters, although the shot's too wide and there's too much bokeh, that's not a Wes Anderson motif, but the person suddenly has the production value of a Wes Anderson film. Does that make sense?
Yeah. For sure.
All right. You see where I'm going with like, you start mixing these words together and suddenly
Yeah.
we start getting interesting. This is where it gets really weird to me. One of my favorite photographers is Gregory Crewsden. Check this out, Jeff Worley.
Yep.
I feel like I just ripped off his work.
Pretty much. A little closer overall.
Yeah, it is a little closer, but the bottom left,
Bottom left is very much that looks like it could be a print.
and there's no open doors is the only problem.
Yeah.
So if it's the same prompt, a woman staring into the distance in the style of Gregory Crewsden. That's the only two prompts I gave because I know who Crewsden is. I added
knows
more
who
by.
Crewsden is.
That's correct.
That's what this
I
is showing.
That's exactly right. Now here's the David Fincher effect, and it totally makes sense.
Yep.
Which is the exact same prompt I used on that piece I showed earlier. Is that the prompt we put in as a girl, whatever all the prompts were, but we use in the style of David Fincher to help illustrate that point. If you type it in wrong, sometimes you get weird stuff. Like I typed in anamorphic cinema camera, and it thought it meant give them an anamorphic camera, right?
Yeah.
So it is a little bit about rolling it up. I tried Denis Villeneuve. It didn't totally work except for this bottom left one felt like Villeneuve to me. And that looks really much like a Denis Villeneuve piece. If you look at the anamorphic on this, it's almost like a Loa. Look how
Yeah.
circular it is.
The other one, the bottom right one, also kind of looks like it though, but it looks almost in the style of Bradford Young.
Yeah, down here, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
But it definitely has that Villeneuve sort of vibe, right?
it does.
So with the lady, I zoomed out. So now I started zooming
Yeah.
out because I wanted to see more of the location. If you look, she stays mostly the same looking, except the background shifts a little bit. Same thing here. And then eventually I settled on this shot. I was like, well, man, if I was going to tell the story, that's a perfect frame to help tell the story I was telling if this is what I was after. A woman staring to the distance. Maybe she's in the woods. If you look in the background, there's a great tree look. Look how the lens warp is really good on it. That looks like a key frame from any movie on the planet, right? But it's also great for our pitch decks. So then I typed in some different stuff. So that's for cinema stuff. So let's say, how does that work in advertising or something maybe we're speccing out? And that's where it got interesting for me to go in and play with a man sitting in a bright and airy coffee shop drinking from a cup, pops of color in the style of advertisement, realistic photograph, high contrast, wide. And you get this kind of vibe. That's too weird. None of that. My brain doesn't resonate. Like it's artsy, but it doesn't feel like an ad. Until here, and this top left one. That just
Top left
seems
one
like,
definitely does.
right? So as I blew it up and I went through, I was able to start looking at it. And I was like, man, this frame is fantastic. I would love to light something like this. I have the idea for the project. The only downside is the guy's not happy enough, and he's also white. Because one thing that drove me crazy is that every single person is white. And,
Yes.
And so it's like, well, wait a second. Do I have to actually prompt this? And if I type in the phrase a black man, is it going to make a male that is not a black in terms of race, but literally the color black in the sense of like white and or, red and yellow and green and blue, like a traditional color. So it's like, is it going to interpret that the right way? Do I type African American? Because then the word African is going to have an effect. So I typed in, I re-rolled this again. I typed in a man sitting in a coffee shop, pops of color, and I got a black guy. And I was like, oh, finally, I got somebody. And he's happy. So this shot works really well. It has the same vibe as the other one. It works really well. As you can see, that feels like a State Farm commercial. Or whatever else, right? I could steal that and use that as reference.
You could.
In fact, this time it even added somebody in the background,
Yeah, it
which
did.
is just a nice little note to add some depth to the shot. And so now I said, I just kept re-rolling to try and experiment. And that's when I really started noticing, like, wait a second, it's not giving me very many like diversity options. It keeps giving me the same white people. I mean, there's a few that are thrown in there, but it's typically the same over and over again. And so
They're like all white people look the same.
eventually I was like, well, let me see what happens if I do a docu-style interview. Will it work for that? Oh, hell yes,
Wow.
it will. There you go. What I find fascinating is it's a portrait of a black man. What is the prompt? A portrait of a black man sitting on a stool. Background's out of focus. Lighting from the left side. Soft light shot on Sony FX6, by the way.
In the style of a
So-
documentary.
In the style of the documentary. So what's interesting is it does have full frame qualities to it because I picked a camera. I've also noticed that you
That's
can
crazy.
pick still cameras. You can pick still cameras and it gives you that effect as
You
well.
can.
Certain ones.
Yes. You can do a Pentax 6x7. That's the only one.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Holy
So,
smokes.
so if you think about it, if you need something to have a vibe of a full frame, then you can actually craft that in there. Now, I tried other cameras, like a red camera. I'll show you a Panasonic GH6.
GH6.
It just, look what it did. It just put a weird camera shape in the frame, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We did try to put a camera in there. Oh my god.
So some of it understands and some of it doesn't. Here's a red Raptor camera, and it just
Puts like a dinosaur in there.
I know. That would have been amazing. There's a little raptor in the background.
And so then I was able to see if I could direct it from lighting from a specific side.
Yeah. Rim light.
And it worked. You can type in rim light. Rim light has an effect. So if you're trying to get something to illustrate that,
Have you tried a book light?
I've not, because I'm going to have to figure out how to explain that
Yeah.
in
what I was thinking
simplistic
too.
lighting terms. Yeah.
You
So
think
you
it
might be able
wouldn't
to
it
get away
wouldn't
with-
be able to Google it and see what the definition of a book light was and try to replicate that?
Well,
Sure.
my understanding right now is it uses basic photography terms and it doesn't go into slang terms. And technically, a book light is a slang term.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
That would be my only.
That's definitely a
only
soft
caveat.
light.
Yeah, I mean the soft light, it's got it down.
bounce. Yeah.
I mean this profile shot is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
That's gorgeous. And I would use something like that in an interview. In fact, like it's a great keyframe for me to as a reminder of something I might want to use from a lighting perspective.
I'd say 3 of those 4 are worthy.
I even love the fact that by
acceptable.
giving it the right prompts, it's giving me like sources in the background,
Yeah.
so that it's
That's what I
giving
like
me the
about the
idea.
style of documentary. It automatically pops that backlight, that back hair light into your picture.
Yeah, for sure. So every once in a while, though, you get a major miss. Like I don't know what's happening down here. It looks like he has one leg. His hand is on it.
Uh-huh.
He's
It's a
leaning
horror
against
movie.
the wall. Yeah, he kind of looks like Kylo Ren. I don't know what happened there. Again, I just wanted you guys to see this is more overhead style. It did
Yeah.
okay with that. It didn't do super great. Some of that's because I think the real challenge with this is you have to find your workflow. Back to our automating workflow.
You do.
You have to find your workflow because as much as I just want to re-roll it by changing little things, I don't think it does very well with that as much as if you copy and paste it and make it a first-time roll every time, you have a better chance of getting stuff out of it.
I noticed that with ChatGPT as well to make scripts. I had to figure out exactly how to work it to get the style of script I wanted.
Right.
So it makes sense.
So that's my big
Very cool.
takeaway. My thing is for me, if any of us are sitting here and part of our job is being creative and being a DP, I also think it makes you a better creative because as you've learned with ChatGPT, it does give you that kickstart to the prompt, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing in this. This prompt is going to help me. But now I'm asking you to practice describing the scene that you want it to see in your head, right? So
That's
when you
actually,
do
I
get
found
that
to
picture,
be the
yeah.
hardest part because you do have to get very specific sometimes. But if you get too specific, it gets crazy.
But that's
also
Obviously,
good
just
from a-
ChatGPT
Go ahead.
too.
You just explained though what some people are worried about, and that's like replacing a storyboard artist right there.
Yeah.
If you do it right.
Except the only thing is right now it doesn't allow you to lock that face, and there's a way to do some things where you can lock somebody in. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, look, I'm not knocking storyboards, but I often find that a well placed shot diagram serves me better unless it's something very specific like a stunt or a VFX plate. That'll always need to be done. But we moved away from them because I found them to be a little bit more constrictive than I wanted them to be.
Well, and you got to wait for them. Where this, it's you're typing it in, and correct me if I'm wrong. Aren't you getting it back pretty quickly?
Yeah,
Yeah,
60
it's-
seconds.
If not,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, that's 60 seconds, not 24 hours, 48 hours a week. You know,
Yeah.
that's what's crazy.
Yeah.
That's why I would do it every time. I could just keep moving. You know, I can keep working.
And that's the thing. That's the whole thing about the AI side that I think keeps getting overlooked. So I think the people that are in fear of it creating everything for them, we're not there yet. I think we've got a long time before it's ever going to really have that artist sense. And here's my biggest argument for that, right? If we are going to get rid of creators in general, what did I just do to describe their scenes? For the most part, I typed in someone's name. So, and people are still doing that. They're still typing in a person that looks like Tom Cruise, or they're typing in the style of Wes Anderson. So we still need those artists to create reference points so that it does have something to go off of. And recently, I just saw it in the trades. A judge passed a law, or judge passed it in
I was getting ready to
California that
mention this.
says,
Yep.
that copyright is no longer, or that AI material is not copywritten. It can't be
Yeah.
copywritten,
You
rather.
cannot,
Yeah.
you cannot copyright.
And that's I think that's actually really good. And
I
you
do
know,
too.
I don't know what you guys think, but I think it'll ease a lot of people.
So it's interesting to me though, is it's like in some cases there's some really great artwork that I've seen that's AI generated, and I've seen it print and I've seen it sell. Okay, I have no problem with it. I mean, it's art in the perspective of who wants to pay for it or what it means to someone, and if it means enough for them to buy it, then arguably solid art. But I have a buddy who started a web store that's nothing but selling those. Isn't that the equivalent of an NFT though at that point?
If it's online
It'll-
only, right?
Right, and it'll never exist again. It can only be rolled that way one time, right? So how are you going to re-roll that? Because it just doesn't do it that way. So then, to me, it destroys the concept of NFTs. So,
Or making it as an NFT.
or making it as an NFT. You're right. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
I don't know what's your stance on some of this stuff. You talked about the automation side. What is your stance as an artist? I mean, do you feel like you'd be replaced?
I don't know. Like I agree. I think we're so far away from that. Because look, I don't know what you guys have seen AI based that's actually made it to production, but the only thing I've seen was the intro to Secret Invasion,
Yes.
and that still wasn't fully AI because I don't think you can put the logo in there for Secret Invasion and make that AI or the Marvel logo. You know, like that's still stuff that's done with artists in some way or form. I feel like the background and all that art was AI, but that's the only thing I've seen that made it to like a high-end production. I haven't seen anything else.
Yeah, I agree. It's
I don't
also
think-
the weirdest part of Secret Invasion, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that whole show's a mess. It's a mess. From
Well, I was also going to
Yeah.
say that it might
Yeah.
possibly be the best part of the show,
yeah,
but
Yeah.
I didn't kind of want to go that way.
Yeah, no, I wasn't going to go into it because I'm like, oh, a lot of people don't like this show, but
Oh, no.
the AI thing is basically the only topic for me.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm with you on it. I'm wondering, though, if there's some AI background. So what I'm really curious about is the amount of AI workflow, especially from the VFX side, that may be happening. I'm certainly very excited because I just had to do a huge rotoscope and use RotoBrush. I really want AI to become my slave for rotoscoping. Like, I'm all about it. Like, please, I'm your robot, or I'm your overlord robot. Please rotoscope everything for me because I'm done with it.
Have you guys tried the AI generated effects in Adobe in Photoshop?
I have not really. I've tried a little bit of auto-generated fill. That's
Yeah,
really
that's what
all
I
I've
mean.
tried.
That's
Yeah,
what,
I've tried
that's
some of
exactly
it,
what I
yeah.
mean. Okay.
It can be off the wall, but also very cool at the same time.
I'm not gonna call out my friend that did this. He's close. I have a buddy that produces content. He produced. They sent him a picture of Madonna that was like this,
Uh-huh.
and it's for a Times Square billboard. And he was like, they wanted it bigger, and he had to up the res in order to meet the specs. So he used the content fill. Nobody, including Madonna's people, knew it, and it was displayed in Times Square.
Nice.
Okay.
So the AI,
Sounds
and
good.
it cut her hands off, and it recreated
Yeah.
her hands.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
also,
I mean-
Topaz AI is doing some amazing stuff with taking like 720, 460, like any different
yeah.
small size, and taking all that blur and doing some amazing things with it.
Mm-hmm.
I've
they're-
not tried the
they're-
video side. I've only tried the photo side.
Yeah, Gigapixel's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
it upscales like a champ. So, but is that technically? I mean, yes, it's AI, but that's really like a plugin essentially,
Yeah,
right?
that's where AI gets little.
That's why I'm
wonky
saying
for
it's
me. Yeah.
a air quotes.
A lot of it is just useful tools that will never replace.
I feel like it's too much of a general term right now.
It is.
Yeah.
It's just like, you see all the strikes right now. They're like, AI replace this and AI replace that. It's like, well, you're talking about a specific segment of that, and we're talking about something completely different.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's the same thing. You're referring to it as the same thing. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I think some of it's a brand issue, right? I think some of it's just a marketing and brand thing because it's easier. It's a buzzword, so now people are going to say the buzzword. And
It
then
is.
when that one wears off, they'll move on to something else. Do you think though? So let's talk about Sony cameras for 1 second.
Oh, that is
Because-
AI. I used that I didn't think about.
And I was going to say, as someone who didn't give strong word 2 buckets of about autofocus until
Oh.
I had to use an FX30 on a project, and I was like, this is the real deal. This makes my life 10 times easier. I can actually get the shot this way. Yes, I could go through the pain in the ass of having Jeff Worley pull focus, or I can slap this lens on and get what we need and move on with life.
Did we all make this transition like at the same time, or what are we saying here? I mean, when I
have
messed
not.
with Sony too, I had like the exact same
know.
thought in my head. I'm like, this autofocus is crazy. Like, why have I not been using this for the past like 2 years on anything that wasn't narrative? That the autofocus, like, it doesn't like go out. It doesn't breathe. It was insane. I agree. The AI autofocus that they have on these new Sony cameras, never would have imagined autofocus would have become this good. Never would have imagined it would have entered my workflow at all.
So I started saying, okay, I told Jeff, I was like, I'm gonna start sleeping with the autofocus a little bit. I'm gonna cheat on my manual wife with an autofocus wife. And
We can't
and so
afford me to go down there sometimes, though.
Yeah,
true.
I'm sure.
That's
Now
true.
that I moved.
So I had to. So when we went down that, I rented the what's the new Panasonic, the S2, S2 5S,
S5X or something.
yeah, whatever that guy is.
Yeah.
I rented one of those,
Two.
and and I'm not trashing them, but I'd already shot with the FX3, and I mean, I was spoiled. The autofocus on the FX3
Yeah.
is leaps and bounds. Also,
Yeah.
it's not the camera's fault. And Lens Reynolds, God love him, was very good to me to try and remedy the situation. The lens they sent me disconnected constantly from the camera, and mid take you would lose complete and total. You'd lose the shot altogether, and it would just start bouncing, meow, 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 and you'd hear
Yeah,
the motor
that's
just
not good.
whine. No, it was not good.
Yeah, I did a test right when the S5 II came out, not the X, but the 2, which
That's what
I
it
don't
was.
know.
That's
There's
what
like
mine
small
was.
differences. That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
So a buddy of mine got one. He was doing a lot of videos on it, and he came down to South Florida. He's like, "Hey, you want to test it against your FX30?" I'm like, "Sure." It's not fair. It's full frame against crop sensor, but let's see how it is. And boy, once we got to the autofocus, I ended up not making a review video on it because I didn't want to have a video where I'm like constantly the FX30 is better because the autofocus is so much better. But that's kind of like where it was. The autofocus was just so much better. The guy who had the S5 II, he was planning on being like, yeah, this is full frame. The autofocus is great. It's way better. Even in his video, he's like, yeah, the autofocus even on the FX30, it doesn't even touch this camera like at all.
Yeah.
So there's no competition, but they're getting there. Panasonic is getting there. It was way better than any other Panasonic camera I've used.
They
Oh,
definitely-
100%.
Yeah, they have definitely made improvements to every camera that they've come up with.
I think to me one of the challenges with any of the camera manufacturers is autofocus is not something I get. Like I said before, I've never cared about it until I saw the opportunity where I could use it. And so another example of that is like, look, we blew up. Our company exploded. We got real busy real fast. So one of the number one reasons why the FX3 became more interesting, first off, we built a rig that was a 360 revolving camera. And though arguably you should be able to set a perfect center focal point, we decided to make the revolving camera move at the same time because it was on dolly track. So the person would move in and out of focus plane, right? So they're not perfectly centered so the camera's rotating 360 and the camera's moving forward or backwards. So you're getting a wacky parallax, weird perspective happening.
Yep.
So where Jeff couldn't pull the focus, we had to just use that lens, right? So it became helpful that way. But I also went on a shoot where we're so busy, I had to grab my producer. She does not shoot at all. She's not a shooter, right? And so I threw a camera in her hands, turned on the autofocus, was like, just point, see the little box, point it at stuff, and keep it there.
Oh, yeah.
And her
We've
footage
done that
was
multiple times.
Yep, 100% usable.
And that's where I give Sony a lot of credit. I've done the same. I've given the camera to my dad, and I've been like, hey, like record me doing this really quick. I need something for my channel. Knows nothing about cameras. I just set a few of the settings for him, and I get it back, and I'm like, this looks fantastic. We just handheld IBIS from IBIS, GH5 is when I first started caring about IBIS.
Yeah.
I haven't cared about it in a camera since, but now that I've got this and it's got IBIS, autofocus, IBIS, I don't even need a gimbal a lot of the times.
Yeah.
If you're shoulder mounted, definitely don't need. It's so stable. It's great. So we're talking about AI. We're talking about Sony cameras. Have you guys played with the automatic reframing? Any of the cameras that have that? That's AI based.
I have not.
I have not either.
Okay.
Only because not because I'm anti it, only because I haven't needed to play with it too much yet. Like I've been really fortunate to where I haven't had to do a bunch of punch-in work. Does that work in camera or is it through a post-processing concept?
Oh, it's in camera. It's only on two cameras right now. It's on the ZVE1, which is based the A7S III in a smaller body.
Yeah.
And it's on the A6700, which is like a mirrorless version of the FX30.
Yeah.
But on the A6700, it's downscaling from a 6K sensor. So when it's doing all of these like sensor crop punches and whatnot, you're still getting a 4K image, unlike the other cameras that you're punching in on 4K, so you're getting a 1080 image. So the actual resolving image you get in that final product, not only does it look like someone's actually physically manning the camera, but it's actually pretty sharp. Lens dependent, of course.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool. You can set it to one of three settings. You either want a wide, medium, or tight shot. And then the only limitation I've seen is if your subject is too far away and you've set it to a tight shot, you're still basically going to get like a medium shot or even a wide shot, depending on how far they are. But that was like the only feature of the A6700 where I was like, whew, solo shooters. If you don't live in Florida and aren't filming in like super hot environments where this thing's going to overheat, like they're going to get some cool features out. Anyone filming indoors essentially will get like will be able to get like some pretty cool extra shots that look like they've been manned. It was a manned camera, and you could just up your price on the production side, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff that that's AI driven. So there's a lot of that stuff that I'm really curious about. As we go further into it, if you add that into a cinema camera, that used to be the same thing like for us on back with the Reds when we were in that scam, not scam, sorry, in that camp.
In that scamp.
In that little slip there. Back when we were in that game, we would, I'm not, somewhere Scott Balcom has his ears perked up and he's like, someone just talked shit about Red. I must offend him. Love you, Scott. I hope you watch. Anyway, so the thing with us is that's back when we would just hit the button and punch it on the sensor anyway. That's what we used to do all the time.
Of course.
Like you'd slap a 50 on. But what's interesting is if it's in camera and it's automated, it's going to make it a little bit easier. And I have a feeling, especially to your point you're made, about the 6K and the down sample, you're going to end up with a better product. If they can bring that to the opportunity, it's not necessarily something we might use in the cinema world, but it is something I'd use in the doco world all the time. And we shoot a lot of doco style work. So again,
I'll be honest, I think that's gonna come to every Sony camera. I think it's just something they can't work backwards on, because from my understanding, there is an AI chip. There is a piece of hardware that runs the AI that lets them do that on these newer cameras. But the A6700 is not a creator camera. I don't understand why they wouldn't add it to every camera moving forward, because it's every modern Sony camera has the clear image zoom, and that's what the technology of the cropping and reframing is all based off of. Yeah. So it's like, give it to us, even if we're only going to use it every once in a while. I think everyone would have a use for it at some point, especially if you're in an all Sony workflow and you're using multiple Sony cameras. Why not?
But Sony makes weird decisions like the FX, I don't know if the 30 does, but the FX3 does not have the opportunity ever to use shutter angle degrees.
And the FX30 doesn't either. I don't think any of the non-cinema Sony cameras let you do that.
It's just dumb.
Even though it's an FX camera. I see what you're getting at. It's a cinema camera. Why aren't you letting us do that? Don't get it. I mean, hey, until recently we couldn't do 48 1/48. Yeah. You know, until that 2.0 update came out, it was 1/50. Right.
So I'm not pro. I don't want to make this like the Sony talk, because I'd like to have you back on for a conversation that we keep teasing, but we haven't officially said anything yet. Because we did go. Have you ever heard of? And I got to get as close to closing out because I do have a 2 p.m. Have you ever heard of the HBO camera assessment series?
I have. I saw, the only thing I've been able to see from it is from a few years ago, HBO posted like a teaser of it. And that's how I heard about it. And I'm like, what is this? I got to see this. And then I saw in your guys' last live stream that you went to see it. So I was excited to hear what you thought about it.
Yeah, I think when we get to that point, it'll be an episode that we'll have to talk through, because there's a lot, and I have notes. Yeah. We all had conversations, and I have, you can't photo anything, and if you go look for it, you can't find anything on it. It's really wild, especially now. Like, I couldn't even find reference images, so it's a talky episode for us.
Okay. Yeah.
But I have a collection of notes. I think we're going to potentially. I'd love to have you be part of the conversation, just because you're going to ask questions that we asked that we may have forgotten about answering on the day. You know what I mean? Just because of that. And maybe we'll bring a couple of DPs or anybody that's in the creative side, because some of the stuff that we pulled up and some of the information that's, again, coming from our memory, and it's as unbiased as we could possibly make it. really shattered our opinion of some cameras. I will tell you this, and I'm going to say it right now, and maybe this is going to be my little clip that I put on the internet. Film is dead. It's done. Bye-bye, film. Thanks for hanging. Retire. You're done. Jeff saw it. You can't deny it.
I did. Yeah. I'm just gonna
Cameras
stay
are getting
quiet
great.
about it right now.
35 mil's gone. Maybe 70 can hang out, but 35's gone. It's out. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Not sensor size. I'm talking about actual film.
Film. Yeah, that makes sense. I wouldn't disagree with you with what I've seen lately. You guys saw the whole creator debacle with that movie? The creator from Gareth Edwards? Okay, so 30 second sum. So the creator's a movie that the DP, who was originally on it, Greg Fraser, he made an announcement they were going to use all Sony FX3s to film this movie. Shortly before he left the movie, because he had to go work on a small movie called Dune 2. And this new DP came in, took over, and, we start seeing the trailers now, and it looks really good. And everyone's saying, apparently they shot on the FX3. Fast forward to now, all the behind the scenes are coming out, and Gareth Edwards, the director, did an interview at Comic-Con, and they shot the whole movie on FX3s, Sony FX3s,
You're kidding
the
me.
ones you use. And now I started scouring. I did a live stream on this last night where I spoke about it because originally I didn't believe it. I thought that maybe they used it as like a secondary camera with an Alexa 65.
Yeah.
And then I started to see how they did it, and that's why I'm going on this trip this weekend and bringing all this stuff so I can go shoot raw on the FX30. That's how they did this movie. They had Atomos. I don't know if it was the Ninja V or the V Plus, but it was very clearly an Atomos Ninja, and they're taking the raw data into it. And now that there are plugins that you can convert ProRes RAW into, CD and G and all that, you can technically edit the ProRes RAW in any of the editors now. So I can understand, looking at this later down the line, why they shot it that way. Because the FX3 is technically a camera that can shoot raw video. You just have to have the tools to do it. So
And can we talk about and this will be a conversation when we go to that. We're going to bring that back up when we do that stream as well, because I didn't know that.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna read
And
something too.
it directly relates to some of the stuff that we want to talk about for the HBO cameras, which is
That's
if
why I
you
bring
have
it
a
up.
chance, if I get a chance next year and we get the invite, because it came to us from a VP from Universal, and then she knows who I am because I worked with her because of our buddy Horst, and then Horst invited me and Jeff, and I said, Jeff, I'll pay for it. Let's go. I will bring you, Jeff
Yeah.
Fagan. I will call you
Oh,
and be
bro,
like,
I'll
"Get on."
come in 2 seconds. I'll be like, tell me where I'm buying the ticket. I'm booking it right now. I'm there with you guys.
So it is literally, it was literally like the nerdiest weekend I've had in a long time. Better than any bachelor party I've ever been to, because all we did was talk tech and drink some beers
And
Yeah.
great food.
and go sit and look.
wow.
So it's something that we have to do again because it's going to happen, or we're going to figure out how to make our own, because I think it would be really fascinating if we took what we knew and we hired a DP to do it. We produced it. It's huge value for everybody. Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't
Sounds great.
surprise me. The Sony FX3, the image quality we've gotten out of that sensor on projects now that we've used it on is absolutely mind blowing. It's mind blowing. It really is. And
Don't doubt
that's
it.
just, and that's because I hate S-Log except for now. I'm okay with, what are we on, 3? S-Log 3?
That's like 30.
Yeah. It's Cinema Gamut. Cinema Gamut.
Yeah. Sorry. But I didn't like it
Yeah,
before.
all
and
the little flavors. Yeah.
I-
But I know why you didn't like it before. The color science is different now. Even if though it's S-Log 3,
got
it
it.
is not the same color science on these cameras that it was prior to the pandemic.
Yep.
Just wasn't the case.
It's 100% it. Is there anything you want to plug, Jeff, while you're here, and we let you plug free stuff?
No, thanks,
Reach
guys.
Films.
Yeah, check out Reach Films. Got a little YouTube channel doing some gear reviews, talking about some projects I'm working on, and that's really it. Thanks for having me on, guys. It was fun to talk
really-
tech.
Always.
I really want us to get to a point where we have like a regular show where the three of us, and then we bring in a guest in. So there's three of us with three
Yeah.
different viewpoints, because I think it would be a lot of fun to make this more of a regular thing, almost like a crack a beer. This can be an IPA show, or this is going to be a whatever. We'll figure it out.
I'm
But
down with that.
or some kind of
we'll
beverage.
just talk
An
beforehand.
adult beverage
Figure
show.
it out.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right,
Cool.
so shout
I
out
love
to
it.
everybody in the chat. Thank you for hanging out.
Yep.
I saw that the Todd is here.
Yes,
The-
VFX Todd. Old VFX
Holy
Todd.
smokes! Calls from the past, my good man.
Yep.
Robin's with us again.
Yep.
Kevin Kelly
just
is.
posted recently.
Yeah, how's the color of the FX30? Jeff, do you want to answer that real quick before we go?
FX30, it's good. It's almost as good as the FX3. It's missing a little bit of that magic, but it's very, very close. So,
There it is.
really good.
Yeah.
All right, well, Jeff, stay on the line just for a second. I'll kill the stream here in a second. Thank you all for hanging out with us. We appreciate you being here. Thanks for watching or listening, if that's your choice medium, which is weird because we showed a lot of visual stuff. But either way, you do your own thing.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you at some random point in the random future in some random time. I'm Drew, and this was what is your name?
Which one?
I don't care.
I'm Beard Fosse.
And I'm
Just
Geoff.
going with it. There we go.
Thank you guys for hanging out. Talk to you soon.